Welcome to the Coco VidVid Show. My name is Cody and I will be your host. My guest today is the CEO of Bitspace Development since 2015, and he's also on the board of directors at New Media Manitoba since 2017, I believe. He's an expert, or at least I treat him as the foremost expert locally on VR development. His name is Dan Blair. Thank you for joining me today, Dan.
Maybe I'm just pretending to be an expert. Thank you for having me.
I'm not sure you exist. You could be completely virtual.
I'm just an avatar.
You're just an avatar.
Just an avatar.
You're just you exist as a deepfake algorithm somewhere.
It's true. Yeah, someone is wearing a suit somewhere and just controlling what I'm doing, and I'm just a poorly rendered human that exists in this digital world.
You laugh about that, but I feel like that's the future of. Maybe we'll get into that and this guy.
Maybe we'll see where this takes us.
Yeah, let's see where it takes us. But let's start off with your company, with Bitspace Development. I'd like to know how you guys got started, where you're based out of, what kind of projects and clients do you work with.
So Bitspace is my baby. I founded it in 2015 and I've been running it ever since. It's an interesting story because I accidentally started it way back in the day, and I'm still here because I don't actually know how to stop doing it, and I really like doing it. But Bitspace is a company that's focused almost entirely on innovation and R&D in the immersive technology space. So we develop simulators, we develop custom peripherals, we develop applications and solutions using technology that falls around the peripherals and directly in the sector of immersive technology. So we do a lot of work with Internet of Things sensors. We do a lot of work with AR and VR headsets. There's a little stack beside me here. We do everything from digital twins to reconstructed virtual training scenarios. Even though we're completely remote today, we happen to be located here in Winnipeg.
Do you have anybody in your office? Is there anybody actually working out of the office right now?
The only soul in my office right now is me. 100% of our company is remote right now, and we have been since March. And there's a few people that may come down once in a while, but for the most part, especially during the latest code red restriction, we've been 100% remote.
So you guys have been in business since 2015. At least that's what I have in my notes.
Yeah, it feels like a long time. That's ancient history at this point.
Yeah, the last time I met you in person was probably 2014. So since then, everything has changed for you. How much has changed in VR or in VR, AR, and how much has the technology changed? Has there been...
You could ask the same question of how much has it changed since last year? This is one of the fastest growing and changing ecosystems that exist right now. But we were entirely focused on the type of VR where you just slide your phone into a cardboard viewer and the Oculus DK2. Since then, so much technology has come out. Over the last 5 years, we've seen headsets go from cardboard boxes that you put your phone in, all the way to high-end gaming and prosumer headsets that are powered by very high-end computers and standalone headsets. So ones like this here, where you put on the headset, you can walk around, you don't need a phone or a computer. It is vastly different of a landscape today than it was when I started the company. Back in 2015, if I knocked on your door and said, would you like to build a VR simulator? The answer was almost certainly no. We happen to be in the depths of a global pandemic, which has made this technology more relevant than ever. And it is a completely different ecosystem than what it was back in the day.
Yeah, well, you touched about it a little bit there. It's just like the global pandemic that's happening right now. COVID locking us down, working from home remotely. How has this year changed or strengthened or enforced what you've thought about VR and those types of technologies?
Probably going to be a long answer. COVID has affected both myself and my company in a lot of different ways. And it'll be interesting to go back to podcasts and recordings that I was on way back in March, talking about how we're so ready for this and all the digital technologies we were already using to meet every day. But in reality, we just had no idea, and we still have no idea where this is going. We had our work Christmas party last night.
Hmm.
But our work Christmas party was in VR. Very appropriately, we're a company that leverages the technology, and we use a tool called Mozilla Hubs. Last year at the holiday party, I talked a lot about how, as a startup, we really grew and we were really solidified as a company, and we had at this point experienced everything there was to experience. So last night, I had said to my team, I don't know what I was talking about. I wasn't prepared. What this pandemic did, and it's been absolutely awful, the amount of death and the amount of changes that has come to people's lives. But one thing that has really affected my business was the entire mentality shift in two different ways. One, people are not interested in sharing VR headsets anymore. I see it being a very long time before we get back to that being a comfortable thing, if ever. Another thing, though, that this pandemic has done is opened up a lot of people's eyes to the use of the technology for applications at their businesses. So, a lot of dead leads came back. A lot of people that we had to talk to in a couple of years that were originally interested suddenly resurfaced. And we're in a vastly different position today as we were earlier in this year. At the beginning of the year, we experienced some layoffs due to projects being canceled or postponed. I've been hiring since September now. As projects have been picking up, companies have got to the point where they're more interested in an innovation budget, an innovation program, and they're exploring this technology. Some are using it in ways like we do every day to meet and collaborate. Some are simulating and making training easy.
What has surprised you about like the way that people are using it now that you didn't foresee before?
Well, I'm seeing a lot more adoption on the social side than I initially anticipated this year. Using it for things like holiday parties and events and conferences. I've been to so many conferences I wouldn't have been to otherwise this year. Oh, and spoken at conferences I wouldn't have spoken at otherwise because of the fact that I can do it all from my home office.
Yep.
Slide on a VR headset. Now I'm speaking at the Students in VR conference or Educators in VR or
are there any companies trying to do it that aren't already kind of inherently in that tech space, in that business space? Like, do you see it happening in like fashion?
There's a lot of conferences and a lot of companies right now that are moving into that mentality that didn't traditionally. I think that the pandemic, what it has done for in the VR industry is really pushed it ahead quite a lot faster than any other year previously. And that comes both because of technology, but also opportunity because of real world scenarios that are happening. I think about myself as a father and as a person, not just a business owner, trying to run my business from home while also having my kids doing school from home and sitting in the same room as me and trying to attend these conferences. I have created such a streamlined workflow for myself now that incorporates my kids into this because I've had to. Like they're doing school and I happen to be doing a meeting, so they're doing a Zoom meeting and we're scheduling meetings around school and stuff, allowing and encouraging specifically my oldest daughter to use VR to connect with her friends and to socialize because she can't otherwise because how do you go see friends?
Right.
So it's been interesting to adapt both as a business owner and as a father during this pandemic because it's really made me rethink how I was even using the technology that I was selling every day, at a fundamental level.
For sure. And how old are your kids?
So I have 3 daughters. I have a 12-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 3-month-old.
Well, I can't imagine.
She came along during the pandemic.
Yeah, that sounds like a harrowing story about just what that even is
that was
like.
definitely interesting. Going and delivering a baby in what we missed out on Code Red. So we were lucky when the baby came.
Right.
When we were planning on having our 3rd child, it wasn't a pandemic yet, so we didn't know any better. And
wasn't
luckily here in our
planning.
Province, we were lucky in the sense that we were able to have the baby, bring her home, and then get settled in, and then things started to get worse here. Yeah. But the adjustment to having a newborn while trying to run a startup at home. And I am lucky that my wife also runs Bitspace with me. So we work together. So we're raising kids together, building a company together, and I'm lucky to have her support because I wouldn't be able to do it without it. On a personal level, like just adapting to this pandemic and trying to, one, build a company that's fun to work at and doing
Hmm.
meaningful work while also being there for my kids is a balancing act.
Hmm.
And this pandemic has really made me take a perspective of, what do I really want to be focusing on? And I think that has actually really helped me grow as a CEO and as a
Sure.
founder, because I've had to make difficult decisions and I've had to adapt to things that I didn't think I'd have to adapt to, both at home and at work. And I think that overall, it has set me up in a way that I think I'm going into the next year in a way better place mentally, than I was going into 2020.
That's
I
great
thought
to
that we
hear.
were going to spend this whole year groaning at all the optometrist ads talking about getting 2020 vision, and they didn't even get a chance before all this. I only heard one joke.
That's true. That's next year, right? Like hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
That's what it's gonna all be about that. Oh God. For social connections for your children, do you feel like they're connecting with their friends the same? Do you feel like I imagine it's probably harder to make new friends. Do you see technology helping in bridging the gap there?
I think that technology is helping everyone stay connected to their friends, whether they have VR or not. VR takes that slightly further in the sense that, well, one, your avatar can represent you who you are. So you get
Mm,
to be yourself regardless of how you physically look. But I believe that it allows for a high level of connection with people, mainly because I do it every day. Every weekend, I put on my headset for a little bit and I go to concerts and I go and I meet up with VR friends that I know from the industry, or I just go hang out at the comedy clubs and stuff. And it's as if I can go out and socialize in real life, but I'm doing it in a VR headset. And maybe some whiskey's involved sometimes, and sometimes that gets out of hand. And Scotch Dan emerges ready to do some online shopping. But but I think that that technology, like there are elements. It could be considered a shortcoming of the technology. Like one, it's pretty expensive still. Right now we have like the Oculus Quest 2. The price point's still $300-400 a headset, and that's not money to throw away. It's not a cheap hobby to get into. Um, I like the technology for my older kids. Obviously my infant is not going in VR. My 3-year-old, she has looked in the headsets a few times. There's a really sweet moment where she was riding a roller coaster and just having a great time. But she doesn't spend much time in it. But my oldest daughter, I do think it is beneficial because you can go and you can meet friends because as a parent it's more challenging, but I'm still able to monitor what's happening. I know what kind of apps she's using. I know
That's
where
true.
she's socializing because I use all the same apps. I can hear what she's doing, and I have my own headset. I want to check in on her. I'll pop my headset on and go check. You can make new friends, and I don't think that it's much different than allowing my daughter to, for example, play Roblox with her friends or to play Minecraft with her friends. It's more about having that connection in this time where we can't really have it otherwise. And that's part of the mentality why at Bitspace we do our morning stand up in Mozilla Hubs every day. So we're able to have our avatars and we can walk around together and we can have meetings and breakaway and have groups of us like move from here to here together. And when we were doing our holiday party, we pushed the platform to its potential where we had multiple rooms you could move between. We had movies going on in one room, so we were playing the old 70s Star Wars holiday special in a movie theater off in one room, and we had Jackbox going in
That's the movie you
the
chose?
room, and we had the snowman decorating, and we had a Scotch club off to the side, and all those things connected and allowed us to kind of move freely as if it was a real holiday party for
That sounds
for
right.
work where you could go from thing to thing and break away and have a discussion, and we had little competitions, and it allowed us to do more than just all get on Zoom together and then listen to me talk for an hour. And it felt good. It didn't feel like one of those lame mandatory fun Zoom meetings that everyone gets stuck on.
Mandatory fun, yeah.
Think that it allows for a level of human connection that you can't get otherwise. And that really comes down because of the medium. VR is the only medium that allows me to give you a sense of presence and let you look through the eyes of a story character, right? And that whether that story character is like a character in a game or you're a social avatar in a setting where now you can all interact, you are there and you get to look through those eyes, and that's what you are experiencing. And so, you get the empathy of being there with someone. You get to reach out and, if, depending on the headsets that you're using, you might have your controllers. You could reach out and touch each other's hands and stuff. And like, that's something that you can do only in a virtual environment that you aren't going to get otherwise.
How are you finding just you with your friend group, with your non-professional friend group? How are you finding ways to socialize? Like, it's just Zoom. Is it just Zoom call after Zoom call, and then maybe
It
somebody?
gets challenging. I mean, so there's multiple challenges, and so maybe this is a fairly personal answer, but one of my strengths is not maintaining friendships. I'm a studio founder. I'm a startup founder. I work. I also have 3 kids, and a wife, and so like, and obviously my wife's my best friend. But like, if I try to think of like, people that I used to hang out with all the time, one of my strengths is definitely not maintaining those types of friendships. And so it takes a lot of effort, and it's been challenging, especially during the pandemic. I mean, the older I get, the more obvious it is that it is challenging to maintain friendships and relationships outside of professional circles. The nice thing, though, is that I think that with the pandemic, it has made people more open to digital meetings. So it has been easier. But I mean, I often think about people that maybe don't have close circles, like friend circles that they can call on for support when they need it. And so I'm lucky that I do have people that I can call on. But that's probably one of the biggest things that has happened to people during this pandemic, is they've been cut off from their support circles.
Well, I mean, one barrier even is just like broadband isn't necessarily available everywhere.
Oh,
Like that's just the lowest
one of the
barrier.
biggest problems. Like, we battle that all the time at Bitspace. Like, we think of like, when we're deploying a VR simulation into a rural or northern community, and they want to access the hardware, often we will go for an offline solution running on specialized hardware like a Pico headset, because they just don't have a reliable connection. But the flip side of that is we don't get the multiplayer aspect of it. You can't play
Yeah.
together. And VR without the social piece is inherently isolating.
Yeah, you're literally putting something on your face away and isolating you
Yeah.
from the real world. Unless there's somebody else connecting into that virtual world with you, you're alone.
Yep.
It was super interesting to hear about your Christmas party and how you had that going, because I can imagine a lot of other workplaces, a lot of other companies thinking like, that sounds cool. I wish we could have done that. We did a Zoom party where everybody sat in front of a camera and didn't really know what to do. What could you say to a business that is maybe brand new into that space and they wanted to run an event like that? Where would they even start? Would they work with a company like yourself or some other company to try to help organize that event and set up the infrastructure? How do you even begin planning an event like that if you have
Well, the
no
best
experience
place
with
to
it?
start is always going to be to talk to someone who has some knowledge in the space. And it doesn't have to be me. It could be anybody that's working in VR that has some experience running events in a VR setting. But one of the best places to start is to basically take stock of what your team has access to. So, do you have VR headsets? Does your team, or are they all just using PCs? That might largely affect what platform you use. After that, start thinking about what you can use to take advantage of the VR space to its full capacity. So planning out the space ahead of time is no different than planning a physical event. How many rooms do you need? Do you have to have breakout spaces? So it can be a little bit of overhead on the days of the event, but once you're using it, like we use it every day for our stand-ups, and for that we're not presenting. We're just popping in, chatting. It becomes quite an accessible tool in that capacity. So starting with it, one of the best ways, like I said, is I mean, seek out anybody, whether that's local or one of your partners that you're already working with that has experience working in VR with events. And then beyond that, attend some. There are some really extravagant ones like Microsoft Dev Days in alt space, and then there's some really small ones where it's just a fireside chat with like the Virtual World Society, for example. There's all kinds of things happening every day.
Is there like a central hub somewhere where you can look up these events? Like,
One of my favorite people to follow on Twitter is Andy with Get Social. Hashtag Get Social, and the whole list of VR. events that are happening in alt space hubs and related platforms.
I usually like to end these talks about what kind of positive note and positive change we've seen in this year. But I feel like you've talked a lot about different positives in the VR space. But is there anything that stands out to you from this pandemic? Will come out better on the other end, having been through it?
I mean, I think like the most positive thing that I experienced during this pandemic was my own personal growth. And I think like coming out the other end of it as where I'm at as a CEO today versus where I was at this time last year, completely different. And I don't mean that like I've got a treasure chest behind me or something. What I mean is that like I've grown.
What's that?
As a person. Oh yeah, hide it. But I've grown as a person, which means that like, having to make difficult decisions and having to adapt to real world scenarios and difficult scenarios in the world has given me skills that you can only really get by going through the toughest stuff.
Yeah.
And so for me, the most positive thing that has happened during all this, I mean, aside from my family's been healthy the whole time, my team has been healthy the whole time, we've had work for my team, we've been able to grow in certain ways, both in people and in, the types of projects we're working on. And, personally, going back to, being a dad going into this, adapting my family to this, adapting my business to this, there is just so much that I could have only learned by having to deal with this. And I 100% realize and am grateful that not everyone has had a very good experience with this. And like, there's been elements of this that have been awful for me as well. And I realize that like, there's a lot of luck and privilege that comes from the industry that I work in, the what we've achieved during this. And I truly believe that's because of the team that worked with me right now. I can point them in a direction and I can support them and try and help them grow. But at the end of the day, we've got a lot of really great people working here that have really helped to solidify our direction. And I think that is largely because of my ability to grow as a CEO and help find people and really look for certain character traits in people that have really been able to prove this to me. So, just to summarize, the number one thing that I have seen as a positive change this year has been, an opportunity and a necessity for self-growth and discovery as a CEO and a startup founder.
I think it's a good year for that personal growth for a lot of people, just in so many ways, right? Like it's not just because you're probably spending a lot of time isolated from other people and at home, spending a lot of time, and maybe some people have been laid off or whatever.
My work hours got a lot longer randomly. Sure why.
You had a kid. That's what.
Yes, exactly. I work harder now and longer because I have more kids.
Yeah, so it's always really cool to hear like the personal growth that's coming out of this year as well, and that seems to be a theme with a lot of the people that I talk to, and I love hearing that. So, thank you so much for coming by, Dan. This was a pleasure. I think I learned so much. I'm super excited. I need to pick up a headset and go to some of these concerts, I think.
Yeah, I'll send you some recommendations.
Send me some recommendations. Send me a headset if you got one. No,
I'll see what I got.
Doesn't matter if it doesn't work anymore. I'll try to make it work. Yeah, thanks a lot. I really appreciate you coming by, Dan. And yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that's it for today's I'd like to thank Dan for being my guest in this episode. And if you made it this far, it would mean a lot to me if you hit that like button and hit subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this. If you need to get in contact with me for any reason, leave a comment down below or send me an email at cody@cocovidvid.com. That's it. See you next time.